This next story I have for you involves one of my favorite squadron commanders. He showed up at Vance after I'd been there maybe 6, 8 months, maybe a little longer. But at any rate, really a great guy and just a fun guy to be around. And it was obvious that he cared for the troops. I learned a lot from him. At any rate, this one night he comes into the club, sits down at our table, and begins to tell us this story. It took place in the early 60s. I'm thinking maybe 62, 63. He had been an IP at Webb Air Force Base in Big Spring, Texas. Now, at the time, they were flying the T-33, the T-Bird, which was a straight-wing jet trainer, the predecessor to the T-38. So, this one Friday afternoon, he and a buddy of his decided to take a jet and fly cross-country to Greenville, Mississippi. At the time, I think Greenville was an Air Force base, but I'm not sure. At any rate, they land at Greenville, head over to the Officers Club, and enjoy the evening and so forth. The next morning, unbeknownst to Colonel H, his buddy gets up, goes out to base ops, fires up the airplane, and takes off. And he flies over to his girlfriend's place, probably 25, 30 miles away from Greenville. And when he gets there, he decides to beat up the town a little bit. So he puts on one heck of an air show for the fine folks of this sleepy little town. And then, after a series of rolls and loops and whifferdills and whatever else came to mind, he heads over to the airstrip, a little 5,000-foot airstrip, lands, and taxis up to the FBO, the Fixed Base Operation. At that point, his girlfriend shows up. He sticks her in the back seat, straps her in, and they take off and go for a ride. After maybe 20, 30 minutes of flying around, admiring the sights and this, that, and the other, this nagging little light bulb goes off in his head, and he looks down at the gas gauge and goes, "Oh, crap, I better get back." So he heads back to the airfield there in that little town, lands, taxis up to the FBO again, helps her out of the airplane. Then he tells the attendant, so he takes out his wallet, thumbs through it, and he says, "I need $80 of JP4. Well, this guy says, "Sir, we don't have JP4 at this station." He says, "Well, what do you got?" He said, "Well, we got this high octane or whatever it was we can put in there." And he says, "Good, that'll work fine." So the guy fills up, gives him $80 worth. Lieutenant pays him, and off he goes. When he gets to Greenville, he lands, taxis up, and is in the process of filling out the forms when he sees his crew chief come up to him. Crew chief walks up and says, "Sir," he says, "I have something you need to see." And he says, "What's that?" He says, "Come on, follow me around back." So they go around to the back of the aircraft, and the crew chief points at the tailpipe. It is ash white. It had really burned hot, which meant the whole engine burned hot. But anyway. So the lieutenant looks off to his left, looks to his right, and he says, "All right," he says, "I'm going to need you to take out your ID card." So the young airman fishes through his wallet, pulls out his ID card, and the lieutenant says, "All right, airman," he says, "put your left thumb over the eagle and raise your right hand." So the kid does that. And he says, "We were really afraid of this." And he says, "How long have I been gone?" And the young airman says, "Oh, probably 2, 3 hours maybe." He says, "Have you ever seen a T-Bird fly that long?" And the kid says, "No, sir." So the guy says, "Well," he says, "we are out here at Greenville," which is out of the mainstay of the Air Force, if you will, "and we're testing different fuels, or fuel additives." And he said, "We thought we could put this additive in, and we would enhance our flight duration, but we were thinking it might have some adverse effects, and obviously this is one of them. So I need you to swear that what you've seen here will go no further than you for the rest of your life." And the kid says, "Okay, fine." So he does. All right, that being said, the lieutenant then goes back to his quarters the next morning. He and Colonel H get up, go back to the jet. The young lieutenant that was with Colonel H did the walk around, so nothing would be seen out of the ordinary. Hops in the jet and they fly back to Webb Air Force Base. When they land at Webb, the guy walks around, checks the tailpipe, all is well. Got away with it, or so he thought. About 5 to 6 weeks later, they get called down to the commander's office. And so here you have these two young first lieutenants standing there at attention, and this commander starts into them. It seems that when the FBO began going through the day's receipts 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, whatever it was, he came across that lieutenant's gas receipt. And he thought, my God, this guy's going to need this for his taxes. I better send it to him. But he didn't have an address. So he thought about it for a couple, 3 days. And then what happened is there was a little article in the local newspaper. It came out that Monday or Tuesday. So he took this kid's receipt and a copy of that article, and he sent it to the commander of the Air Force, Washington, D.C. He said, that ought to get to him. Well, it sure as hell did. When that guy got it, whoever he was, he took it upon himself to put an endorsement on it, send it down the chain of command. And with every echelon going down the chain of command, another letter was added to it. So these guys are standing there at attention, and they're listening to all these letters of endorsement that have been added to this guy's receipt and the news article. And Colonel H said that was brutal to sit there and listen to all those letters one by one. Not to mention the listening to the newspaper article that talked about this knothead's graceful rolls and screaming dives and whatever else. He said right there, then and there, he said he could see his career going out the window. But things like that didn't happen those days. As it turned out, the guy that flew the actual sortie, he was delayed promotion to captain for a year. All was forgotten, and my commander made promotion on time, but he kept his head low for the next 6 months to a year. As a postscript to this, both of them then subsequently went to Vietnam and had very successful flying careers after that. Those were the kind of things back in the day. They didn't shoot golden BBs into your chest when you screwed something up like that. I would hate to think what would happen if somebody did something like that today. At any rate, one of the funniest stories I ever heard. Thanks.